Hello, Mobius Tubes listeners. This is Chris, just giving you a heads up that our audio this episode is a bit wonky. Wanted to apologize for that. Heath is traveling. He didn't have his usual microphone set up with him. Everything should return back to the normal audio fidelity you're accustomed to next episode. So with that, please enjoy the show.
Chris!
Heath!
Hello.
Hey! You are our remote field correspondent this episode.
I am shuffling among the droves of people ready to buy the next game console.
Yeah, you've got to line up early. They're in high demand.
They are. Yeah, we joke, but it's gonna be short supply.
Yeah, it strikes me to be very similar with the Wii situation around the launch of that console.
I
How
don't
you
remember
couldn't get
that.
it. Oh yeah, Wii's were the hot thing for it. I don't know if this was actually
They're
the
still a
case,
hot thing.
but it felt like years where you couldn't walk in and guarantee at your local Target they'd have any in stock.
Oh, they're just flying off the shelves.
Right. It was kind of like if you saw one, you'd buy it, even if you weren't in the market to get it, just to give it to friends and family who you know were trying to get one.
This is all news to me.
Oh, it's well known that Nintendo likes to drum up artificial product scarcity to make their consoles more hyped than they might be ordinarily.
Do we drum up artificial product scarcity?
By not releasing every 2 weeks on the dot all the time?
Yeah. It's all a business strategy.
Right. People are just hungry for more episodes by the time they release.
Me sleeping in, that's just market adjustment. Chris, what is this?
This is Mobius Tubes, of course, a video gaming podcast, and this is episode 52. Heath, I've heard that you are having a Halloween party of some kind tonight.
I am.
Tell me more about that.
Well, I mean, it's still the COVID, and so I gotta be wary of people in attendance, whether or not they've been tested.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge because Bailey wants bodies. She wants so many people to gander at her costume that she's made.
She handmade it.
No, she went to the store and got the makings of it, but it was
okay.
It was, of her design, let's say.
Sure.
So yeah, the Halloween get together is trickier. I mean, I would be having this much difficulty even without a pandemic.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a very exclusive list. I'm not invited.
It's because you're like 70 miles away.
All right, fair. But I have a car. I could drive the distance.
Yeah. You know what game might make an appearance during this little get-together?
Do tell.
The Jackbox Party Pack 7.
7. Okay.
That came out 2 days ago.
Oh, this is hot off the presses.
Yeah.
I'm more familiar with Jackbox Party Pack 3 and 4. So tell the listeners at home, what is this game franchise?
Well, no, we also, like that New Year's Eve party, we also played Party Pack 5, right?
Oh, that's the one with the robot rapping game, right?
Is that from 5? That's from 5.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, haven't we played a Murder Trivia Party 2?
Oh, yeah, we have.
Then that's 6.
All right, so maybe I'm more of an expert than I thought.
You've run the gamut. What's Monster Seeking Monster?
Is that 4? I feel
That's
like
gotta be
that's
4. Yeah. So, what makes 7 any different?
What are these games, Heath? They are...
They're just social 4 to 8 player party type, answer on your phone type games.
Super accessible that anyone can jump in just with a mobile device.
That's right. And the flagship game among these party packs, some might say Murder Trivia Party. Some might even say Fibbage, but Fibbage is just, it's so hit or miss depending on the prompts. Quiplash is my go-to Jackbox Party Pack game, as it is yours, because you're limited by how funny the people in attendance are.
Quiplash was the minigame that popped my Jackbox cherry.
And it is going back to the well for Party Pack 7.
Okay.
Because Quiplash 3 is bundled in.
Okay, a new entry.
Yes, because Quiplash 2 came out while we were in college, right?
Mm-hmm. Quiplash 2 was a part of the Jackbox Party Pack 3, is that right?
Yeah. But then they also sold like standalones, didn't they?
They do occasionally do standalones.
Yeah, so that was the beginning of sophomore year.
Oh, so that was 2016, yeah. It has been a hot second since they've released a new Quiplash.
Which, making Party Pack 7 is an instant purchase for me. I bought it like 5 minutes ago.
Okay. Cool. But this is a game you're going to touch it tonight for the first time.
It depends on the state of the party, yeah.
The clientele?
Yeah.
Sure. I've heard interesting comparisons. This is a couple Jackbox Party Packs ago. There was a social deduction game called Push the Button, which I have heard called an Among Us competitor.
No, it's not an Among Us
It's
competitor. No. It's a Resistance competitor.
Okay.
It's a coup competitor. It's a Secret Hitler. But when you have social deduction games, they are distinguishable from each other by their pacing, I would say. Like One Night Werewolf. You are spending every second of the deliberation time trying to get as much information as you can, right? That's
Yes.
It's like a labor-intensive deliberation period. Resistance, also kind of like that. Let's keep Resistance at like the midway point. Coup. If it's not your turn in Coup, you are kind of just chilling. We kick that over to like the left side of the axis. Among Us, there is no shortage of things to do, unless you're dead. But they're changing that, hopefully, pretty soon. The devs have spoken about
okay.
it. Yeah.
That's a pretty significant change, right?
Give you more things to do. Granted, if you're dead and an imposter, there are stuff to do that are interesting. But if you're dead as a crewmate, not much. Among Us, that is a highly labor-intensive in the interim. So that's on the right side of the spectrum. Push the button. Push the button. If you are not amongst the crewmates, let's say, that are under scrutiny and participating in the multiple choice or drawing mini games, you are dozing. It is the least labor-intensive social deduction game available.
Oh, I need to check my sources.
As far as things to do, Among Us and Push the Button could not be further apart in terms of interactability.
Okay.
Does that make sense? How else should I say it?
Yeah, there's a lot more downtime in Push the Button.
Yeah, and to Push the Button's credit, they do things that other social deduction games don't. They have fun prompts that you have to lie your way through, and that's unique to that game.
Yeah.
With the exception of maybe like Spyfall, maybe your questioning of your teammates also fits that vein. But definitely, if you're not under scrutiny and Push the Button, you might as well be on Twitter or checking your DMs. So no, don't even put Among Us. There's no similarities, not whatsoever.
None whatsoever. Okay.
No, you're definitely in space. Yeah. Anyway.
Gotcha. All right.
So definitely buy Party Pack 7 before you buy Party Pack 6, which has Push the Button. Because 7's got that Quiplash.
Right. 7 is still kind of an unknown quantity since you haven't played the other games. But
I know, but Chris, imagine if there was like a CD Projekt bundle and there was a game you had not played yet. Would you be like, it remains to be seen what's in this bundle? No, you would buy the bundle.
True, but I guess the difference here is occasionally in a Jackbox game, there will be a stinker minigame you never revisit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Since you are the foremost expert on Jackbox Party Pack games, Heath, which numbered entry in the franchise is your favorite up to this point?
Probably 3.
Okay. Coincidentally, that's the one I've played the most, so I guess I'm inclined to agree. Yeah, I like the trivia, Murder Party, the original ones there. Faking It is in there. I like the lying and bluffing and that. And Quiplash. So what else more could you want?
Yeah. I would throw in Gaspionage, even. It's fun.
Yeah, that is a good one.
It's a change of pace.
Cool. What else happened to you this week? I'm guessing not a whole lot.
Not a whole lot. You know what I was going to do is I was setting up a bit where I was like, this is like leaving the book report to the last day.
Uh-huh.
And I was just racking my brain of like, what are games that I can just crank out in like an hour and have an informed opinion on? So I was thinking about buying Reigns.
Oh, okay.
But we've already done Reigns backwards and forwards, so...
And I didn't exactly give it a glowing recommendation.
No, you did not. So, I was gonna do like a book report bit, but that I haven't played anything.
That's fine.
Can I just fit in some randos?
Sure.
I got a friend request through the Epic Games Store, which must have come from Rocket League.
Oh, right.
Because
multiplayer game. I
don't know the person, and before I just reject this request because I don't know you, and who has friends on Epic Games, I just wanted to give a shout out to Will Air.
Will Air,
who I've now declined. My friend request to you is still pending.
What? I guess that goes to show how often I open the Epic Games Store.
Yeah. Okay, so that was that. And I should have thrown this in with the Jackbox thing. Part of how I paid for the Jackbox Party Pack 7 was with my Steam wallet.
Yeah.
Because I have since sold all my inventory thanks to you.
Oh, right. That was news to you that you could do that.
Yeah, and the grand total for all my sales was $4.09.
I would have guessed between $1 to $2. So
yeah.
You must have had a big inventory.
Quite a haul.
Yeah. Don't spend it all at once, Heath. Or
I
you
did
already
at
have.
Jackbox. Yeah, in addition to like $20 other.
Right. Yeah.
So that's all for me.
Cool. Was there anything in your Steam inventory you decided, hey, I really want to keep this around. I better not sell it?
No. Why would I? Those JPEGs? Why? I don't care about them.
All right. Yeah. Just curious. All right. That brings us to my week and the games I've been playing. And I promised the listeners spooky games for October. And I think I can deliver. Let's touch base on Hades, which, isn't a horror game, but you are in the underworld fighting spirits and skeletons, so it's thematically appropriate.
The amount of time that the number of runs you've gone through might be terrifying to some listeners.
That's the horror component? Yeah, so I've played more than 60 hours of Hades now, more than 50 runs. Suffice to say, I love this game.
This game is tailor-made.
This is the Supergiant game we talked a lot about last week. The roguelite game that is based in Greek mythology. You play as the son of Hades, trying to escape the underworld time and time again. It's a real-time action game. I really dig it. So I've obviously put in a ton of hours. What more is there to say about Hades except when you jump in initially and everything's fresh and new? That's an exciting part of any game experience. Just learning the basics, seeing what the game is all about. The learning process is fun, and that's true of Hades as well. But where I think this game really begins to sing is once you know what you need to keep your eyes peeled for to complete whatever character build you're working on in a given run. So like most roguelites, it's heavily randomized. You don't know which Greek gods are going to appear, what kind of boons they're going to grant you, whether you're going to be a high DPS glass cannon or a big tanky guy. It's really up to the whims of fate. And that's fun. It keeps it fresh. But to beat Hades, it's a tough game. You're going to need to get some synergies working, right? And where I really dig what it does is once you have that knowledge of, okay, Aphrodite, the boons she grants, they're all going to be about damage mitigation. They're going to help me take less damage. And Artemis, she's going to give me critical hit chances so I can do huge DPS. Once you know what the abilities are out there and you can hone in on the missing components that would complete your build, it's like making a recipe. It's a lot of fun. Here's what happens for me on most runs. In the early stages of the run, things are random. Things are really loosey-goosey. But then the build starts to coalesce, and you can see the finished product theoretically in your head. And what you do is you realize, okay, I need to get a boon from Zeus on my normal attack, and suddenly all the synergies will come together. So that then you seek that out, and it feels like you're hunting for just the right perk, and that is a lot of fun because there's a fun risk versus reward element to it, where every time you clear a room, you get a new boon from a god, and boons will have a rarity to them. They could be normal, rare, epic, heroic.
Who's got the best boon?
Right. It's kind of like random loot drops in like a Diablo game. The rarer the boon, obviously the more beneficial it is. So this has happened to me very many times where I want like a cool status effect on my attack, maybe from Aphrodite or Demeter, and I get one really early, but it's common rarity, which just
trash.
It's kind of trashy, but it's also exactly what I need. The question that then arises is, do I take it now? And it's like settling for someone on a date, or I can push it off down the line, hope I can find the same perk later in the run, but of a higher rarity, so it is much better.
Oh, because once you slot these, is it permanent?
Yeah, once you slot them, there are very limited opportunities to sell them off. So slotting one in, it's going to be difficult to replace it. Where if you don't slot it in, then it's the Wild West. You can potentially get much better things down the road. So that's fun, risk versus reward. Do I take it's kind of like, is one bird in the hand worth more than the two in the bush down the road? What do you settle for and when? Because if I'm at the end of the run and I get the common boon I've been looking for, you bet I'm settling because there's not much more time down the road to hold out for that better one.
Right. If you're on your deathbed,
yeah,
and your nurse is a 6 or high, yeah, she's a 6. You're settled. Yeah. To expand upon your earlier analogy.
Yes. Risk versus reward, that's fun. I haven't mentioned how likable this robust cast of characters is.
Well, they all talk a lot.
They do. And to the game's credit, I'm 60 hours in, still encountering dialogue that I've never seen before. I am still uncovering new plot threads as I go, including this epilogue the game has teased me with, which I'm not sure exactly how to trigger just yet. So you could say this game has huge narrative legs to back up its addicting game loop. And that's awesome. I'm still getting side quests from my love interests because this game has a light dating component to it. The front runners for me are Dusa, the floating Gorgon head, or Artemis, the goddess of the hunt. I'm not sure which one I'm going to commit to, but they both have their merits.
Wait, you've been playing for 60 hours, but you haven't committed yet?
I'm really dragging my feet on this one, Heath. Because everyone's so attractive, and they've all got really...
Yeah. Everyone in the underworld is hot.
They are. Like, Poseidon is like the cool uncle, because they're all your family members up on Olympus.
Oh, what? Whoa, wait.
Yeah, because you're the son of Hades, and Hades is brothers to
They're
Poseidon
all
and
your
Zeus.
family members?
Oh, yeah. Oh. That's a little weird. They are all your family members.
Yikes.
But you know how it is on Olympus.
This is a Greek game. That was...
Did you have a thought there?
No, when's the sequel?
When's the sequel? Yeah, that's the thing. Supergiant has never released a direct sequel before. They're always on to the new thing.
This is the most likely contender.
This might end up being one of their most successful games, financially at least.
A well to return to.
Right. Very much so. The weapon variety is still blowing me away. We mentioned how there are like several aspects to each weapon. So you've got the spear, and you initially have 3 aspects you can spec into, which are kind of like subclasses. But each weapon has a hidden aspect, which you must find the criteria to unlock it. And the hidden aspects are really wild. Like they take the weapons and make them do something really strange. For the spear, for example, if you equip the hidden aspect of the spear, suddenly all of your health is cut in half, but you have like new healing regen capabilities. So
I heard about this, yeah.
Okay. Your spin attack with the spear suddenly, whenever it lands a hit, will like heal you some hit points, which usually healing options are limited in Hades. So low health, but healing is like something no other weapon would offer you. So that each weapon is just so diverse. I'm a big bow guy. I love the bow and arrow. That's my favorite. And last but not least, the game's brevity for each run is part of its appeal, because my fastest clear so far has been 26 minutes. That's all the time it took to like finish a run. And with such a low time investment, you feel ready to jump right back in. I'd say a more standard.
Into the Breach take longer than that.
Right, because you're thinking so hard. I'd say a more standard game length is more like 35 minutes for me, hovering around 40. But yeah, definitely sub-hour to complete a successful run. Yeah, so it's just begging me to jump in again and again. And that's all I've really got to say about Hades. We spoke a lot about it last episode. Mm-hmm. So now we can move on to a game that's not just thematically spooky, but is actually spooky. I played a horror game, an indie horror game, from 2017 called Little Nightmares. Heath, have you ever heard of Little Nightmares?
This is Baby's point of view.
Baby's point of view.
Right? Aren't you crawling on the floor?
No, you're not crawling, but you do play as a very small character. You play as a young girl named Six, who is constantly wearing a yellow rain jacket. This game is pretty cool.
It's a puzzle platformer.
It is a puzzle platformer. You know, it's mostly side-scrolling. It's got a cool... I'd almost describe it as like a clay Tim Burton-esque visual appeal to it. Because the Little Nightmare part of the game, you play as a very small character navigating these... They're like household environments, be it a library or a kitchen, but the scale is out of whack, that you're tiny, which almost makes each room feel like a diorama. It's pretty cool. So like when you're in the library, the books are so big you're like climbing a bookcase like a ladder, and avoiding the hostile entities in the room, which are some pretty horrific designs. Yeah, there are some spooky inhabitants in this game. Where I'm going to grab your attention here, Heath, is this game gives me big inside energy. Of course, being Playdead's Inside, the game from the people who made Limbo. That's another mysterious side-scrolling puzzle platforming game, which you and I both adore. This game, Little Nightmares, similar length. It took me under 4 hours to finish. Unfortunately, I'm going to call... I would, if I want to be reductive, I'm going to call this game Diet Inside. What do I mean by that? It's a puzzle platforming game, but the puzzles I'd say they never quite reach the heights of creativity that are on display in the puzzles in Inside. This game is quite mysterious. There's a lot that it leaves to your imagination. There's a lot that you want to figure out as the game progresses, but it's never quite as tantalizing as the mystery in Inside is. And the last reason it's Diet Inside is that this Little Nightmares' final act is great. It's fantastic. It's the best part of the game, the set pieces you go through. But it doesn't quite live up to the final act of Inside, which anyone who's played the game immediately knows what I'm talking about. But to talk a little bit more about Little Nightmares in particular, like I said, you're navigating these giant environments. You start in like a prison kind of area, and each game is segmented into like 4 chapters or so. You'll go from a prison to
a chef's kitchen.
To a chef's kitchen, yeah. And while I did like the mystery of this game, that was what was driving me forward. Just because I found, gameplay-wise, my main criticism is it's a little too trial and error for me. The puzzles weren't so much, I need to think about this and think outside the box. It was more like you stumble into an abrupt fail state, reset, and then you just avoid it on the next time. Which is a criticism that has popped up in Limbo and Inside. They're a little too trial and error, but this felt more egregious to me. It's not the scariest game in the world, but I was definitely stressed by Little Nightmares. My favorite part of the game, and this is kind of a con, was finishing it, logging onto YouTube, and watching plot synopses to break down what I just experienced.
Oh, does it have like a Celeste level subtext?
Oh, what I'll say is it seems maybe a little random and unconnected throughout, but to get the full context of what was happening, I required a YouTube explanation. And
like
that explanation, yeah, kind of Dark Souls-y. The YouTube videos I watched were thoroughly entertaining. That was great. The imagery in this game is great. What shocked me was there is a Little Nightmares extended universe, which tied into the videos I watched. There's a mobile game called Very Little Nightmares, which they referenced, and there's the upcoming Little Nightmares 2. The game is getting a sequel next year. The world of Little Nightmares intrigues me enough to be interested in the sequel, but I wouldn't recommend this game solely for its gameplay. It's a little too frustrating, too simple. It is the tone and the atmosphere that really drew me in, along with some really creepy character designs that I enjoyed seeing. So that was Little Nightmares.
Okay.
A game I would recommend, albeit hesitantly. You've got to have some tolerance for scary games, and you've got to be okay with a puzzle platformer.
Okay.
Do you have any questions, Heath?
No, I was just trying to workshop a way of being like, okay, you enjoyed it for what it was, but you won't recommend it. So it's okay if I sleep on it.
Oh, sleep. Little Nightmares. Gotcha. Alternatively, I think it would be pretty enjoyable to just watch a plot synopsis and just skip the game. That could be fun. And it would save you a lot of time. And I guess last but not least, the last spooky game I've been playing, because what could be scarier than the far reaches of outer space, is Super Mario Galaxy. So obviously not a horror game, but I've have the 3D Mario All-Stars collection on the Switch. I dove into Galaxy first, which was what I remembered being my favorite 3D Mario game. And I like it a lot. I think Odyssey is my favorite, though.
Ooh.
Yeah, how do you feel about that, Heath?
That is contentious.
A little I mean, Odyssey is well beloved, but what is the canonical best 3D Mario? Is it Galaxy 2?
It's Galaxy 2, It's Galaxy 2 and Galaxy. They're interchangeable.
Sure. Okay.
Then it's New Super Mario 3D World.
Oh, okay. I know very little about that game.
Then it's Odyssey.
Interesting.
Odyssey was a little too sporadic. I don't know.
Okay. Galaxy is a game, old game, came out in 2007. I played it at the time. It's funny to me. I revisited a game from my childhood last year. That was the Spyro remasters. And I remembered a lot about those games and the levels and their layouts. Galaxy was a game I played when I was older. I think around the 11 or 12 years old time frame when I originally touched Galaxy on the Wii. It's surprising to me when I'm playing it now how little I remember about this game. It's basically a new game for me. I don't remember anything about it.
I remember tons.
You remember tons. Interesting.
Yeah.
I just finished up the Space Junk Galaxy, which was fun. So why do I prefer Odyssey to Galaxy? I think it's obviously Galaxy does throw a bunch of cool new platforming ideas at your way when you go to a new Galaxy, but I feel like the hat possession mechanic in Odyssey gave them free reign to play around with a lot more experimental mechanics. That variety really appealed to me. Obviously, there's no direct analog in the Galaxy games. Also,
what are you talking about? Fucking gravity, dude.
I mean, yeah, gravity. That's a big new mechanic, but
gravity is the mechanic.
Yeah, it's ever present though, and so like okay, I'm adapting to these like small sphere worlds and how gravity bends as I leap around it, but that's like the central gimmick throughout the entire runtime of Galaxy. While Odyssey, the new gimmick is changing all the time, and I guess maybe no single hat possession in Odyssey usurps the gravity stuff happening in Galaxy. But
Dinosaur would like to have a word.
Oh, so you're saying the possessions are really cool?
Yes.
Yeah, so you're with me that Odyssey's better.
You said that Galaxy does not have a comparable cool mechanic that it uses.
Okay, I guess what I meant by that was an excuse for them to rapidly try out a whole bunch of new ideas. Them being the game designers.
Yeah, so you're saying 0G is sort of one note.
Yeah.
From like the blue drag stars that you have to like inertia your way through, and just like tiny planets that you have to like run around and stomp on the thing.
Yeah, they're variations on the same idea. That
so
being
is the hat.
Gravity. But like sure, the hat, you're literally possessing something every time, but that thing you're possessing has a completely new moveset that you have to try out.
Okay, how different is a Goomba from a fish?
They're very different. Like, some have totally different new control schemes. The tank is like a whole vehicular mini game you have to do, dodging and weaving projectiles. Yeah, Odyssey, in my opinion, is the more inventive, creative game. Come fight me. But to this port's credit, I'm playing it on a Switch Pro controller, obviously not a Wiimote, and it handles great. All the point and clicking stuff you would have to do with the Wiimote sensor, it's all handled great.
How do you collect star bits?
It is motion controls. The Joy-Cons and the Switch Pro controllers have motion in them. So it's just kind of like aiming it at the screen and without the use of a sensor bar at all. So that's really cool.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it, though. I think it's a good game. I will see it through to completion. I'm maybe like 40% of the way. By that, I mean I will see the credits.
Okay, because those comets are hard.
Yeah, the comets are fun, variations on levels you're familiar with. So they'll put you on like a time crunch, or will they mess with gravity? I've only done time trial ones so far.
They'll do like glass cannon one hit. They'll have you race a
Oh,
Shadow Mario.
interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, Odyssey #1, but Galaxy's still great. That's the Chris impression.
That's the minority take.
What the true minority take would be Sunshine is the best, right?
The true minority take is Super Mario Bros. 2 is the best. It's a masterpiece.
I mean, that's a side-scrolling 2D game. Not in contention for best 3D Mario.
Uh-oh, Super Mario Bros. 2.
That's all I've been playing.
Great.
Then we'll take a break. And when we come back, I don't know what we're going to do. See you then. Do you have any news?
I had a funny thing.
It's kind of a light news week following that tidal wave of news last time.
Yeah, very little is going on compared to last time.
You could call it the calm before the storm, since we're only like a month out from these new consoles hitting. Heath, what news were you...
Will I be working at the time they release? Yeah, I will.
Oh. How is that relevant?
Shut up. I was just putting it into my terms.
Okay, into Heath
brain.
context. Gotcha.
Yeah.
What news have you dug up lately, Heath?
This comes from IGN on Twitter. It's in reference to the new FIFA game that they put out this year, I think, right?
Okay.
EA, I'm reading this verbatim. EA has copy and pasted FIFA on Switch for 2 years. So we copy and pasted our review from last year's, but lowered the score naturally.
Holy cow.
So shots fired.
Now, how, like, literally should we interpret that statement? Are they actually, like, just repackaging the old game under a new name and then throwing it on a Switch cartridge?
They're saying that it compared to FIFA 2019 on the Switch, it's the same gameplay without any new development or significant enhancements.
Ouch.
This is specifically on the Switch, according to them.
Okay. Not like the flagship platform for the new FIFA, but this is going below the bare minimum.
Yeah, it's real bad.
Ouch. Wow. Like, what do you think the EA thought process is going through with this decision? Switch players won't notice?
Maybe, yeah.
Wow.
Maybe it's just like to not put it on the Switch would look poorly on... It would reflect poorly on other things. I don't know. You know, it's sort of like if our podcast is not on... Like, the priority is that we put it on Spotify and iTunes.
Yeah.
But it's also not on YouTube. That might reflect poorly, even though the YouTube viewership, it does not matter.
I see.
That's
going off of that analogy, the Switch audience doesn't matter. But it would look bad if it wasn't there.
Right. Yeah. The podcast is FIFA in my comparison.
Right. Whew. I wonder how many people who are just like annual FIFA fans
die hard
have the old Switch version, buy the new one, sight unseen, plug it in, and they're like, this is the same game.
Yeah, with a different opening menu scene,
Right.
Different cinematics.
Sure. I mean, annualized sports games have been being criticized for not iterating enough between installments for years now, but this is taking it to a new height.
What's the last iterative sports game you've purchased?
There may not have been a first one. Yeah, as far as sports game with a year in the title, I don't think I've ever had one.
I mean, growing up, we had Madden 08.
Okay.
Which apparently was like a very good Madden to have.
That was peak Madden 08.
It worked out super well. Look up, Scott the Woz.
Yeah.
He has a whole storyline centered around Madden 08.
And how it's like the peak franchise right there.
Of the franchise, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, the most recent sport games I've purchased are like
Pyre?
Rocket League, if that counts. Pyre, if that counts.
It doesn't.
Mario Kart, does that count?
It's a racing game.
And then most recent after that is like Mario Super Sluggers on the Wii from 2008, I want to say.
Yeah.
So that was a baseball game. And that was the most recent sports games I've purchased. None of them are annualized.
Oh, that's true. I did say, yeah, iterative.
Cool story you dug up there, Heath. That's blowing my mind, actually.
I found it funny that they're like, you're putting in no effort, we're putting in no effort.
Right. Yeah, that seems appropriate from the editorial standpoint. Why review something you've already reviewed?
Yeah.
But the funny part is they docked the score slightly.
Yeah.
What did they say to justify that?
Well, no, as I was continued reading, it looked like a genuine review. It's like
okay.
The Twitter clickbait said that they copy and pasted, but they
didn't.
Looks like they are being more specific than they let on.
Gotcha.
I just thought, in principle, it's funny.
It is.
That's all I have.
I have a short one because this news story has niche appeal. Let's check back in with how new computer hardware launch, gaming-related hardware is going.
Oh, did you look in the PS5 internals?
Oh, that... I know what video you're talking about. They had a Japanese man like tear apart the PS5 to look at the internals. The only takeaway I had from that video was maybe he is a small gentleman, but the size of that console was equivalent to his entire torso.
Well, you know why that is, right?
Because the console is gigantic, right?
Right, but if you took a closer look, 75% of the volume is for the heat sink.
Okay.
This thing will not overheat.
No, and I hear it also runs very quietly.
It's surprisingly quiet, yeah.
So it's what do you want to prioritize? This thing is going to take up half of your living room, but it's going to be cool and silent. So those are the perks you're getting from its...
You wouldn't want it to be tiny and scalding, or maybe like moderately sized and loud.
Right. How would you rate the priorities between size, temperature, and volume, Heath?
I mean, you've seen me carry my like 50-pound desktop up and
That's
down
true.
stairs. I don't give a crap about size. The bigger the better. Noise is I guess a big deal. But then also like, if the bottom of my laptop is scalding,
yeah,
I just put like a blanket down. But then
sure.
I'm worried about covering up the fans.
Right. You want that airflow.
Yeah, I want, but only because I sympathize with the machine. I don't want to smother it in its own heat.
Right.
If there was like a world in which it's like, it's loud, but it stays cool, I would take that.
Oh, I would not take that. I would prefer the heat to the noise. Because in certain situations, the heat could be a positive. Like in the dead of winter, you don't need a space heater anymore.
Yeah. Just start playing Civilization.
Yeah. Fun.
Chris, we ran out of firewood. What are we going to do? Don't worry, guys. Holds up a copy of, like, Crisis.
Right. Crisis Remastered.
A real, what are they called? Benchmark game.
Benchmarks, yes. Speaking of benchmarks, a very PC-related term, just an update. that new generation of NVIDIA graphics cards.
You know what you could have done? Sorry.
What? What could I have done, Heath?
I immediately thought of legitimate bench marks, like marks on a bench, and I was like, soccer has benches, right? If you sit on the bench, no, that's just basketball, right? Or
You're
just
asking the wrong
football? Guy. I felt like soccer has a bench on the sidelines, and you could have been like, hey, Heath, so hopefully the 2020 version of FIFA on the Switch has high-res marks on their field seating. Speaking of benchmarks, and then, oh man, my brain is poisoned.
Yeah, that would have been quite the segue. Too bad we didn't do that.
Too bad. What about NVIDIA?
Those
do
fancy.
You have a 3080 yet?
No, I'm not even close. I have never seen a buy now button on any website. Only sold out. So those are still in short supply. Transitioning from talking GPUs to talking CPUs, there are two CPU manufacturers, Heath. Do you know them? Two
Intel
big ones anyway.
And Vapor Dust.
Intel was correct. And the other one is AMD.
They also make GPUs.
Yeah, AMD does CPUs and GPUs. Their GPUs are the ones that will be...
And they're middling in both.
They've never been... Or what I should say is, at least for the past 15 years or so, they've never been the top high-end manufacturer. But they have been pretty good price to performance. So... as long as you don't care about having the best, they offer you a good value proposition. But the news story here is that scenario has now flipped. AMD just announced their next generation of CPUs. They're called the Ryzen 5000 series, and they have now surpassed Intel in every single aspect. So we're talking productivity apps, like really demanding stuff like video editing. They are the kings there. That. Yeah. They are also, for the first time since 2005, I want to say, they are now the kings of gaming as well. They are on par or better than Intel's latest CPUs. So that is pretty cool. We've seen the crown snatched back by AMD after a 15-year waiting period, and accordingly, they have hiked up their prices. This next generation of AMD CPUs is no longer
like $200.
Currently, their lowest SKU starts at $300, and then the ridiculously powerful one, I want to say, is like $800, $700 or $800. Yeah. So yeah, they are charging a premium for their products now because they are the best in every dimension. So they're gonna milk it for while they're on top.
Well, okay, how soon? Okay, so should I run to my local AMD store, or how soon is Intel gonna clap back?
I've heard rumors that Intel will be releasing new CPUs in 2021. That's so obviously, I think, probably the first half of the year. What's holding Intel back is they have been refusing to reduce their architecture size below 14 nanometers for a long time, while I think these new AMD ones are 7 nanometer chips.
They're onto picometers.
They're getting really small.
You know what? Wait, okay, so it's micro, nano, pico. What? Name another. Yanto?
I can't go below pico. I just don't have that knowledge.
I think I nailed it. Yanto is 10 to the negative 14. Did I just make up a unit
does the internet
of measurement prefix? Okay, I searched Yanto and I ended up with like Yanto on Spotify. Hold on. The way you gotta do it is go micro, nano, pico, femto. That's what it was, not Yanto.
Is there a Yanto?
Femto is to the negative 15. There's no Yanto.
Dang.
To be fair, I was very close, right?
Oh yeah, you're on the pulse of it.
It goes micro, nano, pico, femto, atto.
I am eyeing a fly on my wall.
Yeah, I saw it. I watched you get distracted.
I have got to end it. Be right back.
You got it, everybody. You could probably hear it on the microphone. Oh! Huge development.
Okay.
There's you know how I said Yanto is to the -14?
You were guessing.
Yocto. It's Yocto, and it's 10 to the -24. That's what I was trying to remember.
Do you often work with measurements to the 10 to the -24th power?
Do you not? I'm what could I be measuring? Also, shout out to Zepto, which is just fun to say.
That's fun to say.
That's to the -24. There's 21. The -21. But you were saying Intel is stuck on that nano.
Yeah, 14 nanometer compared to AMD's 7.
Okay.
Half the size.
Yeah, we will never get down to pico.
Never say never, Heath.
Pico is so small compared to nano. You know, wait, we're talking about 7 nanometers is 7,000 picometers.
True.
It'll always be like, oh, we got it down to 2 nanometers. We got it down to 1 nanometer, Chris. We will never get down to pico. That is crazy small.
I'm going to approach you on your deathbed, bearing this podcast episode, as they announce the latest picometer CPUs.
The Pico PC.
Yeah.
It's called the Pico because we got it that small. That's insane. I know that I'm basically like a prospector saying, they'll never these automobiles will never catch on, but no, that's an anachronism I'm gonna stand by. We're stuck at nano's as small as it can get for personal computing.
We shall see.
Okay.
Is that all the news we have to cover?
Yeah, let's start the old discussion topic then.
All right, we'll take another break out of that short news segment, and when we return, we'll have a conversation topic just like old times. We'll see you then. Hey there, Heath.
Hey, I like Roger Ebert.
Okay. We're maybe getting slightly ahead of ourselves.
He's a nice guy.
He's also dead now.
R.I.P.
Yeah, 2013. Heath, what are your degrees in?
Biomedical science and media study.
Media studies. Media is a artistic field, is it not?
It's a broad term. Yeah, it's a Bachelor of Arts, yes.
So you are the leading art authority on this podcast. We have a conversation for everyone today. We're going to be discussing kind of I guess you could call this a passé conversation. Are video games art, or should they be considered art? Something that, for the most part, I feel like people in general don't feel the need to hash out anymore. It's kind of generally agreed upon that they are, at least in the circles I converse with.
Yeah, you'd be hard-pressed to argue otherwise.
Sure, and I think both of us probably have pretty similar feelings on the subject. So for the purposes of this conversation, I will attempt to be devil's advocate at times. But are video games art? Before we can dive into that question, there's arguably a more complicated question that is a prerequisite we must answer, that being, what is art? And to that question, I turn it over to Heath, the leading authority on the subject.
I I want everyone to quickly go to their search engine of choice and type in boldandbrash.jpg.
Boldandbrash.jpg? I'm going to do this live.
Brash.
Did you mean boldandbrash.png?
Yeah, you're right. .png. .png.
Oh, okay. It's the SpongeBob meme.
It's the SpongeBob meme of like he's an art teacher and he's like, I call this one bold and brash, and the art collector goes, more like belongs in the trash.
Yes.
But like, what is art? That's the first thing I think of, not Michelangelo's David.
Just to have some kind of a basis to have this conversation, according to Google, art is the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form, such as painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. So that was the most wordy of the definitions. Other variations on it are works produced by human creative skill and imagination. That's a little more broad. Yeah, I mean, this is almost a philosophical question, defining art. It's a very fluid concept. People have dedicated their lives to defining it. My girlfriend is an art teacher, so she obviously has feelings on the subject.
Yeah.
Her working definition, and I hope I'm representing this correctly, was any piece of work created in a medium with the intention of conveying a message or thought or idea. So that's very broad.
Any kind of medium that is meant to convey a thought.
Yeah, a piece of work someone made with the intention of like making a statement with it. That statement being an idea, any idea from war is terrible to aren't ducks cute. The sophistication of the idea does not matter, just that the work was created to convey some kind of an idea.
Ducks are uggo.
We disagree on that. I think ducks are one of the cuter birds out there.
What? Cute bird? Ooh. Okay. Wow, your girlfriend's definition is very loosey-goosey.
Yeah, it could be applied in all sorts of situations.
Because friggin' does my Baka Matai deepfake mean to convey meaning? That's not art.
I guess as the creator, we'd have to ask you. And it sounds like you didn't really have a message behind it.
It's just to goof on you guys.
Okay. And you certainly did goof. But circling it back to video games, I sent you a famous, or some might call it infamous, thought piece written by, as you alluded to earlier, Roger Ebert. What can you tell us about him, Heath? Ebert, thank you.
He's a prolific movie critic. I only found out about his existence when he got half of his jaw removed. But because he had like super face cancer, and
right,
and he had a show called Ebert and Siskel, and if we ever approach that level of cogent criticism, we will have done very well for ourselves, because they were so well spoken. Granted, Roger Ebert gave Thelma and Louise a 3.5 out of 4 stars. He historically gave things like out of 4 stars.
He used a 4-star scale? I'm not sure if I can get on board with that.
I thought it was kind of interesting. It was very well thought out, not arbitrary at all. You should read his breakdown as to why.
Yeah, so clearly very respected in the field of film criticism. In 1975, he won a Pulitzer Prize for distinguished criticism.
In 75?
Yeah, 1975. He passed away in 2013. And this infamous article he wrote back in 2010 that I was alluding to is titled, "Video Games Can Never Be Art." And he gave his thoughts on the subject here. Heath and I have both read it. It's an interesting piece, maybe worth seeking out. It's not hard to find. And I guess this conversation topic is addressing some of his ideas there, addressing some other ideas I've seen thrown around. How do you want to begin, Heath?
You should start, and I'll just butt in.
Sure. He also addresses some of the ambiguity around the definition of art and how certain definitions could exclude and include all manner of things depending on the definition you're playing with here.
Yeah, he takes a real, like, omniscient defense of his argument. It's just like, I'm not gonna try to nitpick it. This is just a... Like, he like, asserts this theory like you would a law of physics. Just kind of like, here are the facts.
In the abstract.
Yeah.
This article he wrote was kind of it was inspired by a TED Talk he listened to by Kelly Santiago, who was a game designer and producer of video games. She was making an argument that video games already had become art, although in a bit of a rudimentary form currently, when this was written back in 2010. She drew the comparison between modern video games and prehistoric cave paintings, and how obviously that was a very early form of art, but it developed and flourished into more what we think of paintings and sculptures and art like that. She also drew the comparison between how writing was initially just only used in like a record-keeping, bookkeeping capacity.
A ledger, yeah.
And how something like speech originally was just grunts and warnings and signals instead of delicate prose and flowery language.
Song.
Yeah. And she said video games will go through a similar transitionary phase. And we may be at the early end of the spectrum currently, but...
We may be playing through the chicken scratch wall cave painting, but we will get to the Sistine Chapel of video games.
Right. And she said to deny that evolution could ever happen would be short-sighted and just plain...
To which Robert says... to which Roger says, well, I do wear glasses.
Yes, he disagreed with that premise, and he cited several reasons.
The irony is that this article was produced same year as Super Mario Galaxy 2.
What is particularly ironic about that, Heath?
We've talked about Galaxy 2.
Oh,
Didn't
sure,
we
did.
That was like the best 3D Mario?
We said it was definitely in contention
Supposedly,
for it,
yeah.
And you're saying the best 3D Mario is the most
Or
art.
What I should have said is freaking Heavy Rain came out the same year.
Okay, so
that's artsy art.
David Cage is peak video game art. That's the claim you want to make.
Like the faces, that was like a landmark, good-looking game. Still looks good.
Sure. Let's actually jump into that, the good-looking component of games, because it is not at all controversial that obviously games contain millions of art assets in each video game, and the facial capture that goes into portraying the actors, the environmental design, the game's soundtrack, all of those independently are obviously artistic mediums.
Disco Elysium.
What about Disco Elysium? The prose and the writing?
Crazy thought cabinet art and the...
Yes.
And the personalities.
Right. The character writing, the dialogue, all of these things in a vacuum are clearly respected on their artistic merit. So then I guess the question is posed, hey, how could it possibly be that once you combine all these things into a video game form, it ceases to become art?
Disqualified.
And a argument I've heard addressing that point is what I call the museum argument. That being, when you enter a museum, it's this curated collection of a whole bunch of disparate artistic pieces, be it sculptures or paintings, and you go through. Obviously, all the paintings in the museum are pieces of art. And then you walk through the museum, you come out the other side, and the analogy here is, was the museum itself art? Was this curated collection of all the art combined was that in and of itself a piece of art, just fundamentally? And obviously the comparison here is they're comparing the museum to a video game. Is a mere collection of art in and of itself? And the people making this argument are arguing no, the museum obviously isn't art. It's a building. It's a container, basically. And in a similar way, games function as containers for separate pieces of art. And I have thoughts on this. Do you want me to dive in, or do you have thoughts, Heath?
Well, I was about to agree with the museums are not art.
You do agree?
No, or excuse me.
Oh.
Sorry.
You think the museum itself qualifies as art?
No.
No, okay.
Roger was not of the opinion that a museum on itself is art, right?
I'm not sure exactly what his thoughts are on that question.
Okay. I don't think you would.
Probably not. If I could,
that's
guess.
what I said. I was agreeing with him in my speculation.
Okay.
Right, because by that metric, is a library a book?
Is a library a book?
And it's like
functioning.
Quick answer, no.
Right. It's more of a container for the art. I don't think this analogy holds up perfectly well. I think it's flawed, for the reason being, a museum, when each painting, let's say it was a painting museum, when each painting was being created by its individual artist, all of those were happening in a vacuum, right? The artist may never have been aware that this particular piece of art was going to be collected and curated with a bunch of other artists he may or may not have ever heard of into a single museum display. That happened after the fact, but that's not how game development works. Yes, the people making the soundtrack of God of War aren't necessarily the same people who are doing the facial capture, but they are all aware of one another. All of these components are being intentionally created with the eventuality that, yes, they are going to be combined in a very specific way to create this sum that's greater than the parts. A holistic experience that wouldn't exist if that combination never occurred. And since all the teams, while they may not be the same teams creating every part of the game, they're aware of what the other teams are doing. They obviously give feedback to one another. So that kind of structural approach to combining art to make a game versus combining art to make a museum, I think those are very different processes and make it an indirect comparison.
Okay. I see what you mean.
I also, after hearing that argument, I started to be of the opinion maybe the museum itself is art. I think there's certainly like a level of skill and taste that goes into, okay, how do I exactly want to curate what we're going to put on display in this museum? And the way it's organized and laid out, there's many different ways you could do it, and they could give you very different experiences when you're done with the museum, depending on the techniques used. So I think a museum could give you a very different experience depending on its layout and its content within.
Chris.
Yeah.
If I'm making a spreadsheet and I'm putting thoughts into how I want to generate this scatter plot or the shading of certain columns, does that qualify my .xlsx as art?
Because you are applying different shades to the columns?
I am curating the information in the document to be more legible or user friendly. You're being very generous with your assignment of a museum, being that it is curated as being an artistic process. Granted, okay, wait, I'm agreeing with what I'm saying as I'm saying it. Yes, the design elements of a museum may be artistic, but that can't grant the finished product the moniker of art, because that's
to go to your to go to your Excel spreadsheet example, you were talking about making certain design choices to make it more legible or just more clear cut.
Yeah, like curate it. So I choose this kind of chart as opposed to that kind of chart because it looks better on the eyes. Like a
Yeah, I see what you're getting at there.
That's not art. So a museum can't be art.
What if the museum took a very avant-garde approach, and it's like there's two exhibits, right? One is lush grasslands and fields and tropical environments, and the other category is like arid deserts and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Just like barren wastelands. This museum building, it's like 2 miles long, and when you enter, in the certain long corridor, they've cranked up the heat. So you're actually physically uncomfortable while you walk through the arid desert landscapes. And then after like a 2 mile hike, you hit the
what's that
climax.
In the distance?
And then you emerge into the final room of the museum where it's all the lush landscapes, and they have water running and beautiful orchestrated soundtrack playing. And when you emerge into the lush landscape,
what a journey!
What a journey! That experience the museum provided for you, this sweltering hike to a refreshing climax, that experience was elevated by the artistry of the museum and could not be captured by observing the paintings in a vacuum. Is that experience not art?
I'll grant that that's art.
Now that takes more effort than just, I'm going to put this painting next to that one, and having that be the extent to which you try to create a museum experience. This is obviously pretty out there, but I think all the manner of creativity you can put into the museum-going experience could transform that experience into being art itself.
Okay, I liked the dry to wet walk exhibit. That was I could if somebody told me that was art, I'd have a hard time being like, no, it's not, because I can see the meaning behind it and the deliberate creative process in making something like that. That tracks.
The point I was trying to make is, by going to that length, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That experience could not be replicated just by viewing the paintings in isolation. Which is why I think when games do combine all of these disparate components into one single product, it is in and of itself art. But let's get back to Roger here. He says, let me quote this. I think that Roger Ebert's problem is that he thinks you can't have art if there is that amount of malleability in the narrative. In other words, Shakespeare could not have written Romeo and Juliet as a game because it could possibly have a happy ending, you know? If only she hadn't taken that damn poison, if only he had gotten there quicker by speedrunning the game, that tragic ending of Romeo and Juliet could maybe be avoided if it was a game. And then Ebert himself expounds on that idea, saying, this is an interview between a guy named Barker and Ebert. Barker says, let's invent a world where the player gets to go through every emotional journey available. That is art. Offering that to people is art. He's speaking in relation to games. Ebert then replies, if you can go through every emotional journey available, doesn't that devalue each and every one of them? Art seeks to lead you to an inevitable conclusion, not a smorgasbord of choices. If next time I have Romeo and Juliet go through the story naked and standing on their hands, would that be way cool or what?
I love Roger Ebert.
So this is addressing the malleable component of games. They're not static experiences. People can walk away with really different journeys in the same game.
Depends on the game.
It does depend on the game to a certain extent, for sure. But Ebert's point is, if a game doesn't have a single inevitable conclusion, how could it be trying to make a point if it offers so many possible messages? And that was one reason he said a game could never be art. It's too malleable, too fluid. And that's an interesting point. Is each message a game could deliver devalued because there isn't a single message?
No.
You say no.
Like, the choose-your-own-adventure nature of games does not disqualify them any more than it does disqualify books. Like, a choose-your-own-adventure book is no less of a piece of literature. What, am I...
That's funny. Yeah, I guess those two things are exactly the same, aren't they?
Does he...
I would probably be of the opinion Ebert wouldn't consider choose-your-own-adventure books to be art.
No, literature. Do I have to say art? Because that's like the word in question. Here's a fun thought comparison. Sorry, I don't want to derail you. Do you want to speak on the topic?
Oh, sure. I was just going to say...
Because I was about to whip out a Bandersnatch.
All right. Before you Bandersnatch, I was just thinking the point that games offer this entire spectrum of emotional experiences you can take away from them, and that any two players will have totally divergent experiences with the same game. I find that perspective maybe a little misinformed, because Ebert himself admits he's never played a video game. And I'd say, no, you two people who play The Last of Us are going to come away with far more common ground than they have differences in experiences. To suggest that a single game produces an entire rainbow of different experiences is a little ignorant. I think there is some increased malleability over reading static words that never change in a piece of literature. Sure, maybe you get extra frustrated in one level that another person breezed through. But I think holistically, even in very sandboxy games, two people's experiences will have more in common than they differ.
Ooh, you can't say that. That's more in common than they differ. It depends on the game, bruh.
What would you say someone could have a polar opposite experience? What game would offer that? Like, you're playing Civilization as like a war-hungry nation versus a total diplomatic peace-seeking nation?
My mind went to Frog Fractions. As if, like, maybe if that game were, like, a little different, whether or not you could, like, just keep doing the point-and-click fly-catching game.
Oh, someone never...
Or you could go on and do the text-based adventure, the Star Fox parody, the Phoenix Wright text, in, like, cross-examination.
You're saying two people...
Those were, like, open-world avenues.
You're suggesting like two people sit down to play Frog Fractions. One discovers the joke and the other does not. And then they come away with two totally different experiences.
Far more different than similar.
I guess to that argument, I'd say one person never finished the game. So of course they have an uninformed opinion. They didn't see all there was to see.
Okay, as long as you see all there is to see.
That's like I'm sitting down to read The Great Gatsby. One person reads the first 2 pages. The other person finishes the book. Yeah, they had very different experiences. Because one of them didn't finish it.
Okay, yeah, you're completionist in your analogy. Okay. Sure, then, yeah, if everybody completes the same thing, it's going to be more common then.
Okay. What did you want to say about Bandersnatch?
Well, Ebert's a movie guy.
He is. Film buff.
Bandersnatch is a film.
It is.
Bandersnatch has multiple endings.
It does.
Therefore, the multitude of endings devalues every other ending.
Oh. And you're bringing this up as a counterpoint to that statement.
Ebert would not consider Bandersnatch a film.
Yeah, he might not consider the film Clue a film either. That movie has multiple endings.
Yeah. He would consider them like video entertainment, or just some like loosey-goosey term like that.
Right. Yeah.
Because a film needs to have a definitive, like Romeo and Juliet kill themselves.
Yeah. It's not a film, it's a moving picture show.
Yeah. So that's where I go to Devil's Advocate Ebert's background.
Okay, but like you said, he might just disqualify those two kind of experimental films as not being art.
Because their lack of linearity compromises their artistic message. Which is stupid, because, like, imagine if there's, like, a featurette for an actual film.
Uh-huh.
Wait, can we think of a concrete example? Did Blade Runner have an alternate ending that was shot that they didn't go with? But then they, like, released it as, like, a featurette and be like, this is what was left on the cutting room floor. And if they release a director's cut with with the featurette as, like, the definitive ending, I think it was The Exorcist 3.
Okay.
Had a different ending shot that they went with, but there wasn't the theatrical version. As soon as there's more than one definitive version, are we stripping these films of their appraisal?
I mean,
I think Roger is
wouldn't.
like, yeah, Roger is going through the grocery store ripping off the labels of cans because they're no longer cans. They are food containers. Like, it's stupid. Yeah. There's no shortage of exceptions, which is why Roger at the beginning of the article was like, I'm not gonna bother mincing words with you, like, bottom-feeding peasants. Get us back on track, Chris. Video games.
Video games. Let me check my phone notes. Part of the article is Roger Ebert addressing certain games that are cited as being awfully artistic. Certain ones that come up are like Braid and Flower. He calls them more simplistic than like the earliest silent films. Obviously, this is coming from an individual who hasn't sat down and played them, but just from what the pitches he's heard of them.
Wow, so he is unmoving in he is steadfast anti-game.
Yeah, after discussing the games, he says the only way I could experience joy or ecstasy from these games would be through their profit participation.
Wow.
Meaning the only way he'd get any satisfaction from these games is if he was financially benefiting from them.
Of, yeah. Such a smart guy. With such a caveman take.
I mean, this is very anecdotal evidence, but there are books I cherish, there are movies I adore. I think like the peak emotional response I've had to pieces of media have occurred in games.
Yeah.
And now I can only make that claim about myself in particular, but for that to be true of at least one person, there's got to be something there, right? And I don't think it's just me. Other people have intense reactions to games. Hellblade, for example.
Yeah. But that's pretty wild that he is just taking that transformative medium that has left the most lasting of an impact of any form, and is saying it has no redeeming qualities other than monetary gain.
Wait, can you back that up? Did you say games have had the largest impact on what?
On you. You said it was...
on me. Gotcha. Yes, on me. Right, yeah.
He is just dunking on you so bad.
He is. Let's talk about...
You think he hates podcasts?
Which podcast?
Like, in general. Do you think he would say that podcasts are just fervent babble?
Perhaps. I don't know. He'd probably be into, like, those very premeditated podcasts. The ones that aren't conversational. they're
Yeah,
like
the more investigative and
it's
journalistic.
more like a yeah, or
Just
even
an
like
article. Just an article.
sure. Let's talk about game mechanics and whether or not you can convey messages through mechanics.
Two brothers.
Okay, I see what you're getting at there. Because if you want to get really literal about things, the graphics of a game, its visuals, we definitely consider them a part of the game, right? But technically, they don't actually need to be there. The reason the graphics are there... What was that?
L.A. Noire.
What about that police detective game?
I can't figure out whether or not they're lying unless their faces are good.
That's a good point. That game, you're actually like reading people's physical, nonverbal communication.
If it was like ASCII art, it would either have like a smiley face or a frowny face.
This is a really like abstract idea I'm trying to convey. But the reason graphics exist are because we're visual creatures, right? If for some reason we collected data from our environment other than our eyes and light, graphics need not be there. If hypothetically like the entire mechanical model of a game could just be zapped into our head and we know immediately like, okay, I reload every half a second. I have 10 bullets in the chamber. I fire at 1/5 of a second intervals. You could technically like track all the stats of the game just in the head, no visuals required. Purely mechanical games are probably best represented by an abstract game like chess. Chess is almost just mechanics, right? There's a grid and there are pieces on the board, and chess is a board game, but there are video game adaptations of chess. So I'm lumping it in. He said he's a chess fan and a chess player.
Ah.
And he mentioned how he finds chess to be... What did he say? Oh, that's interesting. The person's TED Talk he was watching, Santiago, they conceded that, chess, football, and baseball, and even like mahjong, they cannot be art, no matter how elegant their rules are. And of course, Ebert agreed with that. The definition they were going on to make that claim is that art is the process of deliberately arranging elements in a way that appeals to the senses or emotions. Now, I am of the opinion, through just pure mechanics, a message could be conveyed.
Yeah.
Chess is a pretty good example. The too long didn't read version of chess is you try to capture the opponent's king before yours gets captured.
Get king, don't get checkmated.
Yeah. And it's obviously a very compelling game. People have been playing it for millennia. However, just by playing chess, I think there's like almost a moral to be gleaned from the rules written down on paper. I haven't done an in-depth analysis, but just a cursory knowledge of the game, I could say, okay, I know that from time to time to win a game of chess, you need to sacrifice pieces to win the war as it is. Put your rook in harm's way so that later on you will have you could capture the opponent's queen or even their king.
I think it's called a gambit.
Okay, like making favorable trades.
Yeah.
That obviously gives you messages such as certain sacrifices are worth it for your long-term goal, or the ends justify the means. Things like that could be messages you glean from playing chess on a high level.
Fair enough.
And then like the counterbalance to that is you can never allow your king to be taken, otherwise it's game over. So like the thesis of chess, just based on my loose analysis, is sacrifices must be made, but there are some things in life that are just never worth compromising on. And you could apply that, take that message, apply it to your own real life, and then the message of chess is basically figure out what your priorities are and don't sacrifice on your main priorities.
Yeah.
And I think that is an elegant message conveyed purely through rules.
It's meaningful. Okay, yeah.
It's like life advice. And that means I'm of the opinion chess is art, Mechanics, just pure straight up rules on a piece of paper, are art if they convey a message.
Chris, this is getting verbose.
I'm of the opinion that video games are art, board games are art, and you cannot create a board game or a video game and not have it be art. There's no such thing as a non-artistic video game.
Whoa. Tennis for two.
Now, of course, there's bad art, there's horrible art, but horrible art doesn't stop being art.
Right. Piss Christ.
Right, yeah. Tennis for two. I mean, there's a message in there somewhere. It's probably pretty rudimentary, but just evaluating those mechanics, I mean, I could do an analysis on tennis for two, but it would be pretty simple.
Well, here's an analysis I would request, and maybe some of our listeners as well. Give a breakdown of things that you don't consider art, because it sounds like you pretty much consider everything art.
Ooh, yeah. I'm getting pretty generous with my definition here.
Yeah, I wanted to, yeah.
What is not art?
Gonna give an example.
Okay.
My dining room. Your
dining room. Your dining room exists so that you can perform the bodily function of eating.
Yeah.
It exists for utility. It wasn't designed in a certain manner to convey a message to you. It's just there so that you can continue to consume calories. Yeah, that's probably not art then.
Okay, what if I paint the walls red?
I guess I'd have to ask you, why did you paint the walls red?
Well, red as a color, supposedly, I haven't spoken with an anthropologist, but maybe, I think it might date back to, like, red meat as being like like we've been conditioned to seek that out and associate it with hunger. So red, the reason my dining room is red, according to my parents at least, is because it triggers like a hunger response. It makes you more hungry.
Okay, that sounds pretty practical to me. You're hungrier. You maybe enjoy the food more when you're hungrier. But is there a message there? Is there like a moral to be gleaned from being hungrier and then eating food?
Oh, it has to do with morals.
Maybe it makes you appreciate the food more.
All right,
if you are hungrier.
Wait, all right. Okay, so a dining room is not art.
I mean, if we go with my working definition of art, which is the piece of work, the medium that conveys the message, you'd kind of have to consult the person who painted the walls red and ask them what message they were trying to convey. If they said, no, not really anything, I like the color red, that's why, then I guess that's not art.
Drapes,
but if they have like a justification to back up their artistic decision, then I kind of think it becomes the art.
Okay. That makes sense to me.
And so that ties into why I think inherently a video game must be art, because no one stumbles into creating a video game. It's a labor-intensive process. Most games take years to make. No one just accidentally poops one out. There has to be a certain level of intentionality between every component of the game that makes it into the final product. If everything had intention behind it, it's there for a reason. And that reason being to make the game better or to more fully realize the game developer's vision, then it just has to be art.
Because so much effort and attention was put into the design?
Nothing makes it into the game by accident.
Well, nothing gets into like a syringe by accident, hopefully.
Okay, nothing makes it into a syringe, but like the syringe is being administered for a practical purpose, right?
Yeah, I need my insulin.
Games don't serve a practical purpose.
Okay.
Therefore, all of the decisions going into it are artistic decisions.
They're all in entertainment. Or for the most part, they're all entertainment.
I mean, some may not be very entertaining, but their intention was to be.
That's the linchpin.
Are there any games you personally, Heath, do not consider to be art? If we expand my definition further, I would consider a game of football to be art. Because
wait, no, allow me to expound. I'm Chris, everybody.
Sure.
Because the message that you glean from participating in a football game includes fun motifs such as slow and steady wins the race. As long as you get to the 10-yard mark after 4 downs, you don't have to do Hail Marys. You'll still win the game. If you get into field goal position, you also stand to make gains. So fill in for me.
Yeah, I think the mechanics of football contain a message. We can sit here and debate and analyze exactly what that message is, but I think mechanics inherently contain messages.
Or mechanics give rise to messages.
Right, depending on your interpretation of them and how you interact with them. Now,
Granted, if those mechanics were done so for practical reasons, then
I guess the line is purely practical reasons.
Yeah, if my oven plays a jingle when it's done cooking, that's not art, because it's meant to just notify me rather than give me joy.
Sure, but then if you were to take the jingle, experience
and put it into and put Lil Nas X vocals over it, and it becomes the song of the summer.
I was just gonna say, listen to the jingle purely on its own merits. It's not serving as information or anything. It's just you're evaluating it in a vacuum. Then it's art. You want to know what gives me pause, though? I feel relatively comfortable calling soccer or football or baseball art. What gives me pause is track and field. You want to know why? Because, so like, let's say the 300-meter dash.
Yeah. Wait, no. There's no such thing as the 300-meter dash. Or at least there's like, it goes like 100, 200, and 400. Wait, am I tripping? No, there is a 300-meter dash.
Okay. What's giving me pause about wholeheartedly endorsing that as art is they're racers. They try to cross the finish line. It almost reads to me as just, this is like a clinical test of who has the strongest muscles.
The fastest quick twitch fibers.
Right. If your measurement devices were accurate enough and precise enough, if you could just like assess someone's anatomy, you could theoretically know who would win the race, right? The person with the strongest leg muscles should run the fastest. It is just pure numbers.
No, wait. What if you got nerves? You could be the fastest runner ever, but if you're like shaking in your boots.
What do you mean by that?
Are you joking?
You've got nerves, like a central nervous system.
No, if you have like butterflies in your stomach.
Oh,
if you're
performance
at the
anxiety.
Olympics. So, dude, there are the fastest runners ever that when practicing are hitting like record times. But then you show up at the track meet and you're quivering with anticipation. You can feel like you're going to throw up. And it's like on your marks, and like all the stars from like section 5 are there.
Yeah.
And the gold medal is on the line.
Yeah.
Your super precise muscle measuring devices can't measure that.
It can't account for that. The human element.
The stage fright.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I'll grant you that. I guess like the decision space of how do I play the game of a race better is run faster. There's not really you can't insert any creativity into the way you play the game. There's no expression, right? It's just how fast can I make my legs run? There's no like tactical consideration you can make. What, pole vault?
Yeah, just how high can you jump? How far can you throw?
Right, yeah, how I can, like, I also think of, like, arm wrestling. This is not so much a game as it is an assessment of two individuals' strength.
Arm wrestling, yeah, that's a good one.
These strike me less as games and more as measurements of someone's body.
Right, whereas other sports, there's decision making as to, like, who do I pass the ball to? Whether I should steal that base.
Right. Yes. And while the physical components of someone's bodies could give them an advantage, the decision making is like the game part. Those are my thoughts on that subject. We've been all over the place with this conversation. I knew it was going to go that way. That's fine. You know what else gives me pause?
What?
Solved games. So, for example, tic-tac-toe. There's clearly optimal moves to the point where the game, there is the one best way to play the game, and that's not up for interpretation. Which means any attempt at being creative about playing tic-tac-toe, any attempt to insert your own ingenuity, can never be rewarded, because there's one way to play optimally, and anything else will result in you losing the game.
You're either following the algorithm or not.
Right. But I think I ultimately still fall on the side of it being art. It's awful art, don't get me wrong, but I think it's art because the learning process of being taught the mechanics and then going through them and figuring out why exactly there is one optimal path to victory, that could have a message contained within.
A message contained within.
Yeah, the message of tic-tac-toe could be the fruitlessness of trying to adapt, the inevitability of your failure to not conform to the one strategy. That could be the message of tic-tac-toe.
Oh, man, okay, because I was trying to, this whole, like, it must deliver a message thing. I was trying with my dining room analogy, and the next thing I was going to pitch you is, like, is my chicken coop art? Because don't count your chickens before they hatch. But then you would say, well, you have a chicken coop for practical purposes, so you could eat breakfast. And I'll be like, oh, dang, you got me. It's not meant for entertainment. And now I'm trying to think of, like, what sort of thing is meant for entertainment that has no message to be gleaned other than arm wrestling, track and field, sorting. Like bubble sort. I don't know.
Okay, like
organizing. I love organizing. I find entertainment in it, but no, that's a practical thing. God. So, what was the name of this discussion topic? Like whether or not video games are art?
Right.
And we are giving a resounding yes, almost more than I thought we would.
I do, absolutely.
On the basis that mechanics give rise to meaning.
Yes, I think you can design... I think mechanics contain meaning within.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, in the same way that a painting's visuals can contain meaning, how could the act of doing something through a set of rules, how could you argue that wouldn't contain meaning? It's even more active than the act of observing a painting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And games are unique in that they bolt on that one extra dimension, interactivity, that other artistic mediums don't always have access to. Adding one more dimension that the game could potentially touch you, potentially convey its message to you. With that in mind, I think in some ways games have like a more diverse tool set in which they can convey their message, almost making them the most art.
Which is fascinating, right? Because Roger thinks that they're the least.
Right. He thinks inherently to their premise they cannot be art.
He thinks that the childhood drawing with the crayon on the refrigerator is more art
than Outer Wilds.
The Last of Us, yeah.
Yeah.
So crazy.
To a certain extent, I think the article kind of reads older gentleman who hasn't played a video game complains about video games.
Boomer alert.
Yeah.
But he with the subtext that he is a highly respected critic.
Critic, yes.
So, talk shit, get hit.
I love this old tidbit. Back in the day when writing was emerging on the scene, elders criticized writing as being for the weak-minded because it didn't require you to memorize stories anymore. That was the older generations dissing literature because you didn't need the strength of will and mind to memorize oral traditions anymore. Writing gave you this hack shortcut to jot things down. So the older generations have always disliked the new emerging mediums. It's just been echoed throughout millennia. This is just that case happening again. We'll reach the point where everyone still alive on Earth is well-versed in games. They won't have any qualms with them. And at that point, we'll be criticizing.
I was going, that's the follow-up question is going
you and
forward,
I will be the boomers about
what? Yeah, like TikTok or the future TikTok?
We'll be boomers about the hot new experience machines that are entering the market. Except I won't be. I'll be plugging in.
I already am a boomer about it, yeah.
That was all my thoughts on this topic. And that's going to be a wrap for this episode, this remote episode of Mobius Tubes. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Nailed it. It's 5 exactly.
Perfect timing. Go ahead, send us emails. We love getting them at mobiustubespodcast@gmail.com. And
that's mobiustubespodcast@gmail.com.
It is. I don't know what I'll be playing next time. Probably not any more spooky games. October will be winding down. And I look forward to recording maybe in person with you next time, Heath.
Yeah, hopefully. I prefer that. I'll let you know how Jackbox is. And aren't there a bunch of games coming out that were on our Fantasy Critic?
There are a bunch on your list, not so much mine.
All right. Fingers
so you
crossed.
have a chance to catch up. I've only got 2 left now that Axiom Verge 2 was delayed.
Right.
Good news for you, the Medium was confirmed for coming this year, as was Bugsnax is confirmed for coming out this year.
Thank God.
So those are 2 more ones you have locked in the chamber.
Yes.
All right, catch you next time, Heath.
Bye-bye.
Bye.